This is one of a series of conversations we've been having with a number of our alumni to find out how COVID-19, the pandemic's been affecting them, their businesses, the industries they work in. It's a pleasure today to be talking with Eugene Schneur, one of our alumni. Gene, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we've been talking to different people about how COVID-19 has impacted their industries, their workplaces. It's had impacts across society. We're trying to understand the different experiences people have had. There's so many that have impacted all kinds of businesses, how we operate, how our industries are working, both from a public health standpoint and also the economic impacts. So maybe let's start off with finding a little about how COVID-19's impacted your business and your industry. What have you seen happening?
Well, look, in our business, I'm a developer of affordable housing. We're also an owner, and we manage a lot of buildings. So the impact, we have seen, through COVID-19, the different facets, how this has affected, our homes and our lives. So, for instance, going back all the way to March, which seems like a long time ago, the dark days of March and April, for us, the challenges were that we had buildings to operate. We had buildings to operate where thousands and thousands of people live, and to making sure that our staff that are in these buildings were able to do their jobs, and they were essential workers in a sense, because especially in the cities like New York City, in large high-rise buildings, we needed to make sure that the garbage was taken out, that the buildings were clean, that everything was still working, and this was during the height of the crisis in New York, and to make sure that people were showing up, and these workers that did show up, I mean, look, they were doing as important work as anybody. So that was a challenge, to make sure that they had the tools, the protection. There was a few weeks in March, at the end of March, where it was hard to buy masks. I mean, it wasn't an issue of it wasn't an issue of finances. It was an issue of availability. I mean, like, hospitals didn't have masks and protective gear. So that was a real challenge, because we were asking hundreds and hundreds of workers to come into the workplace, and to make sure that they had gloves and masks and sanitizers. That was, to us during this whole time, was kind of the biggest challenge. Like, by middle of April to the end of April, then it became a lot easier to buy masks and gloves. We needed thousands of these. We wanted everybody to change their masks and their gloves daily. So that was the biggest challenge. Logistically, we've also, I guess we're in the unique position of that, we had workers that were on the ground, dealing with, the crises, and making sure, especially because everybody was home. Remember, in New York City, everybody was home in New York City. And look, we have buildings in Massachusetts and other places. It was, the same situation, but New York was hit the hardest in those months, and that was really challenging. The running of the office aspect of our business was, to us, was secondary. That was an easier portion in the fact that, like, we have about 100 people, a little over 100 people in our headquarters here in Manhattan. But getting everybody to work from home, and using Zoom, obviously, that was, look, it was definitely challenging. and from everybody, from the accounting department to the compliance department to the development department. Those were challenges, but they pale in comparison to the job that our supers and porters and handymen were doing, and some and property managers were doing, really running these buildings when everybody was home. It was also unusual for these buildings. Remember, these buildings usually don't function with everybody, with 100% of the people being home, 100% of the time. So there was real, challenges to that, and that was to us, the most challenging part of it.
That must have been a real challenge with the staff, the nervousness, the fear that we had back in March when the world seemed to be falling apart. And you have this huge staff that you're managing, that you're trying to get the PPE. How did you deal with that in terms of reassuring your staff, making them feel that the organization was looking out for them? How did you navigate that?
Look, one of the things, it was tough because we're asking people to come to their workplace every day where, if they put on, any news channel or the like, especially here in New York City, we were at the height of the epidemic, anywhere in the world. I mean, we were at the center, we were in the, kind of the most quote unquote, dangerous place in the world with respect to the epidemic, and it was tough. I mean, one of the things that we did, and and again, I have a lot of gratitude to all of our staff and the senior staff. Our senior managers at the properties, were showing up to the properties. I made it a point to show up to the properties, at various times. Because I wanted to reassure the staff that I showed up as well to the properties, and I wasn't I was there I wasn't there to help them necessarily do what they were doing, but I thought it was important to show up on certain days to just to show face and to show that I'm here as well, and I got my gloves and I got my mask on, but I'm here as everyone. So that was tough. But our senior managers and our regional managers and our the senior management of the management company, also stepped up and showed up, and were making sure that they were supporting the workers, physically, by showing up physically. And look, and that was a lot to. And people did it on their own, because I couldn't ask anybody to do that, but people did it on their own, and we're very grateful for that.
Yeah. I think one of the lessons of this whole experience is reinforcing the importance of some of the lower level employees that, don't get the attention that others in higher profile positions get. I mean, I've noticed that up here on campus, right? Obviously, the professors get a lot of attention, but I've noticed the cleaning staff more than ever in the past, and I think you appreciate the value of the work that those people are doing in a situation like this. Something that's I'd be interested in hearing a little about is you're in the housing business, providing housing for people. That's obviously been a big concern with the economic impacts of the pandemic, concerns about people being able to meet their rent, having secure housing. What have you been seeing in terms of that economic fallout of the pandemic and how it's affecting your industry?
I mean, look, I think every single industry, in the world has been affected, and, housing has been affected as well. Um, you know, we own and manage affordable housing, so for a lot of the tenants, the rent is subsidized, meaning a portion of the rent is paid through various government program, and they have obviously, their portion that they pay. So one of the things, and and both, on the state level and on the federal level and on the city level, the government agencies were pretty, nimble to react. And for instance, allow people, we have, a lot of our tenants have to do income certifications, and their income, depending on their income, it depends on the subsidy that they receive for their housing. So the various agencies, made it easier to do your income certifications. They had, understanding that, somebody may not be able to get, a letter from their employee at this time if they were even, going on unemployment or had lost their jobs, lost their job. So the various agencies, adapted to the times and made it easier for the various tenants, to do their income recertifications, and they didn't need to do in-person signatures and originals. They allowed people to, basically, sign a document and take a photo on your iPhone and email it to us or to the various agencies. So there was some adaptation to that. So that was obviously helpful to the tenants and to us. Look, people obviously, our rent collection numbers are down compared to normal operations. Again, I think we've been fortunate. We've done better than other asset classes in real estate, and in part because we receive a certain portion of our income stream, our rent, from the government. And that has been, we've been receiving that steadily, throughout all of these months. So we're fortunate for that, and look, we're fortunate that that the government has done their portion, and like we expected it, they always have. So that's so we were less impacted than other asset classes. We had some construction projects going on during this time. So on a new construction project, affordable housing had an exemption. So we were able to continue the construction. We're building a housing complex here in New York City, affordable housing complex. We were able to continue that. There were less labor, on the job site. And obviously we had to institute a whole host of rules and regulations, to keep the workers safer. But we were fortunate that affordable housing had an exemption. Like we're fortunate we were able to, keep building, but also, all of the, and frankly, we made it, through all the various trades, we made it, optional. But look, 90+% of the people showed up every day because look, people want the jobs, and, they have, economic responsibilities and families. So we were, fortunate with that. We were also in the middle of doing some renovations, these rehabs that we do of other buildings, and we had to adapt there because we couldn't go into people's apartments and work in the apartments. So that we had to make certain changes and not work in the apartments. But so that there's challenges, but I think everybody's had challenges on everyone on this planet has had challenges. So.
Yeah, we're all dealing with this new normal, right? That
Right.
Everybody's been talking about. Obviously the pandemic isn't over; it's still continuing on, and hopefully before at some point we're going to get some vaccines to help with it. But one of the things that has been, I think, an important start of a conversation is the question of what changes we've made in response to the pandemic that might actually last. There's things we're doing right now that once we get a vaccine, we probably stop doing, but there's other things we might keep doing. And, you give examples like working by Zoom, remote working. Some businesses are saying, look, we're probably going to keep having more people working remotely, other changes in how we operate. What things do you see in your business, your industry that you think might change for the future, or what things maybe you'll just go back to the way they were before?
So it's a good question. So yesterday, as I said, our organization is a host of different companies, and one of the companies that we own, which is actually headquartered in Indianapolis, the main office is in Indianapolis, is as a tax credit syndicator. So, we kind of run the gamut from, where, we have staff that are the supers and the porters, as we talked about the essential workers, to, the syndicator is it's a financial services company that syndicates low-income housing tax credits. So, very different staff, and everybody's been, working remotely, and, they can. So we had our quarterly board meeting yesterday, which was on Zoom, obviously. And one of the questions and topics that we discussed was that, when the world goes back to normal, whatever that is, are we still going to have, are we still going to have all of the conferences? We're going to have all of these, dinner meetings, lunch meetings. So it was an interesting discussion. And one of the topics that was discussed, and it was interesting. So we have production-wise in the syndication business, and some of it is due to the fact that affordable housing, continue to get built, and because it's so needed around the country. The business, kind of volume-wise, has, continued consistent with previous years. But some of our expenses are actually less than we're used to because people are not traveling. Usually, we syndicate deals. We syndicate deals in like 46 states or something like that. So there's a lot of travel for a large staff, and we have regional offices, and there's a lot of travel. So that line item, by not by choice, but by circumstances, is a very small number this year comparatively. So the discussion was, are people going to travel? Like, is this, do we need to travel so much? I mean, it was an interesting discussion. Like, do we need to travel? People are still working. Deals are getting done. We're closing deals, but everybody's doing it, from their homes on Zoom, and they're still connecting to the various developers and the agencies and the banks, but everybody's doing it by Zoom. So when this ends, are we all gonna rush out and get on a plane? And I'm sure the airlines industry is saying yes. And are we going to stay at the hotels? And obviously the hotel industry needs this to happen. But it's an interesting question, and I don't know whether we're going to do as much business travel or not. I don't, but I'm sure in every industry, and it's not unique to our industry. And affordable housing is in the banking industry, and in other financial industries. Is it? I don't know. It's a good. We will find out, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're obviously thinking about the same thing. Being a university, we have lots of travel too. People go to conferences, do presentations, and that's gone way down for us too. So we're starting to think about the same things. Of can we actually get as much benefit from Zoom and online connections, and then dramatically reduce down our travel? It would save a lot of money.
Not so good for the airline and the hotel industry, but
absolutely.
everybody's looking at their budgets and thinking, wow, look, and especially where people have been able to function, and they're saying, look, do we need? I do think, and again, this is just my opinion, not based on any data or research. I do think the concept of someone jumping on a plane in New York to go to that lunch meeting in Chicago, I'm not so sure that's going to be because, that in-person lunch meeting was, so crucial to, it doesn't matter what industry, and to close that deal. I don't look, maybe it does come back at some point, but I'm not sure anytime soon that, somebody's getting on a plane to go to that lunch meeting and then, flying back the next day, or the same day, or to DC. I know we've done it in our industry, various government meetings where, I've gone on the shuttle to DC, had a meeting and took the shuttle back. So I don't know. Do I need to do that, or can I just Zoom
Yeah,
and have that same meeting on Zoom, in my office? So I don't know. Not
yeah.
sure.
Do you, a similar question comes up with like remote work, to the degree to which you need to be in the office to do the job. And we've discovered that a lot of people can be really productive working remotely, which I think was a question mark often before. Some people could, some people couldn't, but we've all had to, and we've seen people working remotely. My understanding is you in New York City, you guys are now up to 25% capacity. Do you see people coming back into the office at the same level as you go forward, or do you think there's going to be continued more remote work?
I think, if you would have told me in the beginning of March that we can have everybody, in our headquarters, stay home for, what was it, March, April, May, we didn't start coming back till July, even at 25% capacity. If you would have told me that everybody can stay home and, the the company would function, I would say that's a crazy concept. But look, it happened, and it functioned, and people worked from home. So I think, and like, we're at 25% capacity in the office. We're going to go, our plan, again, this is subject to, everything, and the level staying low in New York City. We'd like to, our plan is in October to go to 50%. But definitely, I agree that, people learned how to work remotely. I think for a lot of companies, this was an eye-opening experience, certainly was for us. And I think in the future, I think especially, and it's interesting, and we see it in our workplace, especially the younger workforce, and younger as I'm going to say people, in their 20s and, kind of early 30s. They seem a lot more bullish on working from home, at least some of the time, where people in our office that, are kind of an older generation, a lot of them say, you're like, oh, I want to get back to the office. I want to, I think some of it is what people are used to. But I do think, and look, this will be an interesting ILR, item to monitor. And we've had these conversations with our HR department. And I know that our head of HR has spoken to other HR departments. Like, she believes that in the future, when somebody gets their benefits package, and it's got their, vacation, and it's got their medical, and it's got, their other benefits, that the flexibility to work certain days from home, at least, here in New York City, she believes this is she believes this is the future. She believes this is the future of the benefits package. That's, but look, we'll see. I don't know. I certainly, I could see it. So I think it's very possible.
Yeah, I think, amidst all the difficulties of the last period, something that's being hopeful is I think exactly what you're saying, that people have been more flexible and adaptable than maybe we expected, and I think organizations too are learning to be flexible and to change. We've had a forced situation; we've had to be flexible the last while, but there's some long-term lessons of the fact that we can change our ways of doing things and continue to be, operating and do the things that we need to do, in a different kind of setting. So I want to thank Eugene for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a real pleasure, and good luck with things going forward.
Alex, thank you. Look, thank you, and hope everything is going well at the university. And wishing you guys, an easy transition, or as easy as can be in terms of a transition. And like, hopefully it's some point in 2021 where, back to normal, or whatever that normal is going to look like. And, whether it's in our workplace or in the universities and our schools, that everybody is, back to doing what they're used to doing, with some modifications that I think are here to stay due to this. Look, maybe some of this, and it's been a terrible time in the world. It's been a difficult time, obviously, and it's been tragic for a lot of people. But there's going to be some changes that are going to come out of this that I think are, long lasting, that we're going to, experience, in the workplace, for many years to come, and maybe, decades to come. So.
Yeah, let's hope for some better times to come.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you very much.
Great.
Good to see you on Zoom.
Good to see you as well.
Good to see you.